Faith, I'm glad to join you again for Pastor Talk. I have a special guest today, Mike Miller, who is our archivist. When Pastor Heather and I a few weeks ago had a conversation about the Russian congregation that Faith was a part of helping to start, Mike reached out to me and he said, I know some of the stories about that. And then he went and asked some other people what they remembered about that part of our history. So I want to ask Mike some questions and I want to invite you along. So, Mike, what do you know about this particular relationship that we had with the Russians?
Russian church. Well, I'll tell you what I know, Charla, and part of that is telling stories, which is fun. I love to tell stories. So I remembered some things, but I didn't remember much about the Russian congregation. So I reached out to some people who I knew had been part of the church at the time that we had the Russians here. So I spoke with John and Betsy Owen. I talked with Mary Hedder. I talked with Vicki Courtney, and I talked with Frida Ferguson. All those persons were part of the church at that time. And I heard some great stories. John and Mary especially have such excellent memories for these things. And so I heard great stories. So I'd love to share part of them. Partly we probably need to share the history of how the Methodist Church came to be involved in the Russian initiative.
Yeah.
And that is that in 1927, Stalin put an end to many of the religious activities in Russia. And
Interesting.
So
okay.
that included no more Methodist Church in Russia. And
So it had been there before?
yes, so it had been there before.
Okay.
There were Methodist congregations in existence prior to that. But when perestroika occurred, they allowed religious activity or missionary work to begin to happen again in Russia. And so the Methodist Church in the U.S. Announced what they called the Russian Initiative. And the Russian Initiative was to establish Methodist churches in Russia, or where that wasn't possible, to help reestablish some of the other, like the Greek Orthodox churches, if they couldn't do a Methodist church there.
Right.
And so they began that initiative. And in Tulsa, Faith Church and Christ United Methodist Church both were interested to engage in that.
Oh,
and
okay.
so Bob Pearson with Christ Methodist and our pastor at that time, who was Bob Johns, got together and started to work on this. And we established relationships and helped start a church in a town in Russia whose name I can't pronounce. But,
I'm sure I couldn't either.
no. But I know Bob and Bob, the two Bobs,
Okay.
made 2 or 3 trips to Russia together.
Wow.
And at times they took people from both the Faith congregation and the Christ Methodist congregation, and I think maybe once from some people from the Bixby congregations as well. Because during the time of this initiative, as we know, there are itinerant pastors in the church.
Yes, we do know that for sure.
So Bob itinerated to Bixby and was replaced by David Stevenson.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah, so Bob Johns was serving the Bixby Church. Okay, okay.
So when he went there, he continued to be involved in that effort. And David Stevenson engaged in it as well while he was here.
Oh, okay.
So we had our 2 pastors plus Bob Pearson who went. But so we sent 3 groups of people over there. I think Lloyd Means, Gail Ferguson, Bob Polnow, and maybe 1 or 2 others went from our church over there. I remember some great stories from some of those persons about their trips over there. But the Russians then came back here and visited us as well.
Okay.
So we had people mostly stay with members of the Faith congregation. We split them up by 1s or 2s or 3s, and they stayed in homes. And then they would meet during the day and go tour Tulsa or go for meetings or do whatever they wished to do. So I remember that John Owens told me that like many Europeans when they travel, they dressed very nicely. They were in suits and ties every day, he said. And there were 1 or 2 ladies, mostly males, there were one or two ladies who came with him, and they dressed well as well. And they liked to go see things. He said, John told me they wanted to go to Walmart every day. Every day, they have to have a stop at Walmart.
Faith, can you imagine going to Walmart every day?
So I remember also he said that when they had meals, so usually they would have a meal, group meals at someone's home. They would rotate through homes.
Mm-hmm.
I think John told me he took them to the Grandview Hotel, the one there at 71st and Lewis.
Oh, yeah, right.
For a fancy dinner one night. But I remember him saying, too, that they love to start each meal with vodka.
Of course.
Because they're Russians, right?
Right.
It's natural. He said it wasn't just sip the vodka. He said it was they gave you a glass, and it was the take the glass, salute, and down the hatch.
All at once, I'm sure.
All at once.
Wow.
So, no sipping. And I remember Frida told me that because she doesn't drink, that one of the ladies was very protective of her. And before each round, she would say, "Frida, no vodka for Frida." So
someone's looking out for Frida.
Yeah,
That's great.
That was good. So they went to see some of the businesses. John told me he took them to tour Frankoma Pottery while they're here because it's a natural, native Tulsa industry. But one or two of the guys who came from here were in the porcelain business in Russia, and they were not impressed. He said,
well,
he said this is not.
Those are different genres, really.
So he remembered that as well. But it was really funny. There were lots of good stories.
Well, do you know if anybody ever keeps up with the relationships that were formed during that season?
You know, unfortunately, I think not. I know that John Owen told me he gave them, he paints.
That's right, yeah,
and,
sure.
So he gave them some of his paintings that were indigenous American paintings, and they put those on display in Russia, and he said later he thinks that they went to a museum in Russia. And they gave us, I know that they would give us gifts every day, small gifts, but for perpetuity, they gave us a small ceramic alligator, probably from the people who did the porcelain work.
Well, sure.
And, for many years, that was on our altar up front.
Wow.
But I think maybe when Linda Harker was here, there was some discussion about what was appropriate to have on the altar.
I can only imagine that Linda might have some conversations about that.
So the alligator disappeared, and I don't know where it went. It's not if it's in the archives room, it's lost in there. I don't know where, but
we may have to go dig around a little bit.
We might
see if we can find that alligator somewhere.
Yeah, the bishop from Russia was here in those. He came for those strips.
Wow! So
if you read through the historic records of how the Methodist Church restarted in Russia, when there were enough churches to form a district, they appointed the bishop, and that's the bishop who came to see us.
Okay.
So he was a long-term serving bishop.
Okay. Well, Faith, it's just really interesting to find out some of our history and legacy, and I really did want you to know about this relationship that we've had with the Russian Methodist Church and with many other churches over the years. It's a part of who we are. That we reach out, we connect with love. That's one of our core values, and that we can see within others who are different than us, we can see the light of Christ. So we're looking forward to a great celebration of Advent. Of course, we'd love for you to join us on Sunday, and I'll be preaching both services, and you can even ask Mike Miller some more questions.
I'll tell a story.
That's right. All right, thanks. We'll see you on Sunday, Faith.
Bye-bye.